let's call the meeting back to order. Thank you. And Mark, we have risen from closed session, but we will be going back in at the end of, on the end of our agenda too, as we still have an issue to deal with in closed. So that is the matters arising. Sorry, I should have read this one first. Moved by R. Herget, second by Bev Cutting. Be it resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby returns to open session of Council at 10:13 a.m. Any questions or comments on this motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Mark. And only that matter, those matters that went into closed session are the only ones that were discussed. Comment period. At this time, is there any comments on any of the things that are on the agenda today from anyone in the audience? Mr. Townsend. Stephen?
Yeah, in your future meetings, I noticed not every committee is there. And I also noticed that from the calendar, things have come off, like the police services, for example, but there's been no notification that's changing. I'd be interested in knowing the process for how you manage meeting day changes, because it's difficult to stack to get into something. I'm kind of wondering how effective we are for the part meetings, if that's the case.
As the meetings are scheduled and as individuals' times change, obviously the reasoning for that, we will try and do a better job of getting that up, but thanks for making note of that, and we can discuss it further to make it a better, smoother process for anybody wanting to access and have indications of where those. All the committees are not listed because some of them, out of all the committees we have, some of them meet once or twice. Some of them don't meet over the summer, so that's why Mark, for efficiency purposes, only has those ones that should be coming up or have met since the last council meeting. Okay? Any other comments on anything on the agenda? Seeing none? All right. Public meetings, we don't have any this morning, Mark. Consent agenda, I have a motion moved by R. Herget, seconded by Bev Cutting. Be it resolved that items A1 to B1 inclusive contained in Part 1 consent agenda be adopted as printed, and further that authorization be given for the actions to be taken as may be necessary to give effect to the recommendations contained therein. Any questions or comments on this consent? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Mark. I'll let you hand those ones out. And communications from Mayor and Council. I'll let, is there any council members that have anything that they would like to communicate? Councillor Herget. Rebecca?
So first off, congrats to the Ag Society for a great fall fair here in Durham. Lovely weekend, lots of fun, lots of people out and enjoying. Also, Grey County is going purple for the month of September in awareness of youth mentorship. So grab a kid and show them what you do and get them excited about what you do. Normanby Plowing Match is September 8th, so this coming weekend, and Neustadt Fall Fair coming up September 14th.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else like to say how much money they spent at the dessert auction on Friday night? Doug.
Sorry, I missed that part of it. Other things going on, but did get there on Saturday to the fall fair, and it was. I think they had a very good crowd this year. It sounded like a popular event and a successful parade. So congratulations to the Ag Society for a successful fall fair. Just a couple other items I want to mention today. Fred Fox, brother of Terry Fox, is in town to promote the Terry Fox Run. He's I believe right shortly, if not now, he's at Rockwood Terrace. And then he's visiting a number of schools in the area, so that's sort of exciting for the area. And One other thing that's coming up this Saturday, besides the Normandy plowing match, that Rebecca mentioned, is the Parkinson Walk is happening in Hanover Saturday morning. So for those people who might want to get involved in that. So yeah, that's all I have for now.
Thank you, Doug. Anyone else have anything? Deputy Mayor Bell. John?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I also did attend the Fall Fair on Friday night and Saturday. All around, I think everybody was pretty happy with the amount of people that were there, especially on the Friday night program. And yes, I'd like to thank the counselors that were there. It's always a privilege for me to do a little auctioneering, try to help out the Ag Society make some money. Very great, worthwhile group that puts their best foot forward every year. I don't know who spent the most money, but it was fun trying to get it out of their pockets. So moving on from that, it's, I didn't hear the final sum, but there was definitely more people and more excitement there this year than last year, so that's a good thing. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. You did get a fair bit of money out of some people's pockets. But they did it voluntarily, so there's no excuse from anyone. Very good. Yes, one other thing that's on one of our seniors residents is having a fundraiser on Saturday as well too. It seems that this Saturday is going to be fairly busy with events. Abbeyfield Golf Tournament at the Homestead. If you're not a golfer, I believe that they have dinner is going to be available as well too. If you're not into the golfing aspect of it, you can get a hold of Mary or a number of individuals down at Abbeyfield if you just wanted to come for the dinner and support Abbeyfield, their fundraising event. Okay? And yes, look forward to seeing a number of people out at the Normandy plowing match at the Montag Farm on Saturday, and the Parkinson's Walk as well too. Very good. Bev, you have one thing?
Yeah, just for the public, there is a public meeting at 7 p.m. on September 18th.
Yes.
Have we decided where that's going to be yet?
Brent?
Has it been,
A public meeting on
landfill.
Normandy landfill.
It is going to be held at the Normandy,
Try that.
It's going to be held at the Normandy Community Center, at the arena.
okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
very good.
7 o'clock?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, thanks for that, Bev. On options that we have there. Okay. That's it for communications. Getting close to being back onto time. Mr. Barger. No, I don't think that the Bargers are not here. I can see that. No, it's not 11:30 either. Do we want to drop down to... Huh? No, drop down to, then I think we can go to Director of Finance, Carrie's report. I think it's really just the accounts, which is on page 80. There we are, page 90. Our Director of Finance, Treasurer, is on holidays this week. Hopefully she's enjoying the warm weather. Do we have the... Well, any questions? Laura's here to be able to answer those. I need the motion to approve the accounts. That would be great. As presented. Doug?
Just one question, and maybe our director can, Public Works can answer that. There's an expense in there for the water tank inspections, $3,000 for the 2 water tank inspections. So are we going to have a follow-up or on that, Brent, sometime? I'm just wondering, it's the bills come through. Have we heard anything on that?
There's a large report that I'm going to provide to council at the end of this month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, just wondered.
I wanted time to review it, and yeah,
Right.
so it'll be forthcoming.
Okay, thank you.
I have a motion moved by Bev Cutting, seconded by Johnny Bell. Be it resolved that the Director of Finance Treasurer be authorized to pay the accounts presented as voucher number 16, 2018, in the amount of $697,672.05 of the Municipality of West Grey. Any questions on this motion? Call the question. All those in favor? All those opposed? That's carried. Okay. And that's it for the director. For the financials. Ms. Barger's still not here. So we'll go on down to Brent's report. I think Brent, if I got that right, it's about 1:15. Guessed it right. This one, maintenance restoration, timber bridges. Brent, anything else other than what's in the report here?
Just looking for council's approval to allow Wood Research and Development to use one of our facilities for the educational training in lieu of them providing West Grade 2 seats to attend. I know I'm going to attend. Hopefully, council will agree with that, but as a bare minimum, myself and somebody else.
Pass it this way.
I think it's just it's good timing that this occurs in light of the studies that are currently underway.
New and advanced technology. I'm going to start with Doug and then Rebecca. Doug, go ahead.
So how long is this course, Brent? It doesn't just quite say, was it 1 day, 2 days, all week?
I apologize for that. No, it's a 2-day period.
2 days.
2.5 actually. And the reason why they want to come to West Grey is because of the new wood bridge that they built. And this is a nationwide educational program. So there's people going to come, they feel, from across Canada to come to this facility.
Yeah. The other thing I wondered about, I think it's great, and it's good PR for us, and I mean, you've already got a bridge here. I'm just wondering about accommodations. Are we involved in that they'll look after all that sort of thing?
No, it's just for the classroom facilities only.
No, but I mean, obviously, if people are coming across Canada,
They'll
they're
be
gonna
looking after
for
their own
accommodations. Yeah.
accommodations, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of extra accommodations in Durham, but they'll figure that out, I guess.
Well, there's a few B&Bs and different hotels close by. Rebecca?
Just curious, what building did you think would suit? How many people are we trying to accommodate?
Approximately 25. So I'd like to find a place that's airy, bright. So I'm going to leave it up to, I think I'll approach Stephanie. I'm not 100% familiar with what facilities would be available, but perhaps the fire department, I don't know. Or the warming room in the, up at the arena, I'm not sure. But they need audio visual also, so I gotta kind of source that out. So the old town hall, I'm not sure. So I'm looking for.
Durham Marina Hall, yeah,
Okay,
Centennial Hall.
Yeah.
There's a number of different options, I think, that
Yeah.
we can.
I think they
provide
want to
for
be
that.
close to Durham only because they want to be close proximity to
the bridge
view the
itself?
bridge. Yeah.
Okay. One quick question, students, is there any indication of how many students that may be available to participate in this, or are they?
I don't know. I don't know if they're offering it. I know they told me to extend an offer to adjacent municipalities in the area and also consultants. They're looking at first 25 people. That's all they want. They just want to keep it to a limited number. I'm not sure if they're opening it up to students, engineering students, if that's what you're thinking of, or
Yeah, yeah. Is that a possibility? And, you know,
I can find out. Yep.
okay.
Yep.
That would be great if we could get some of that type of education involved with it as well, too. Okay? All right. I have a motion moved by Rob Thompson, second by John A. Bell. Resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby approves the free use of a municipal facility for the hybrid inspection, maintenance, and restoration and design of timber bridges nationwide training module hosted by Wood Research and Development, WRD, in exchange for 2 free seats for West Grey at the training module at a value of $1,000 per seat. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay. There we are. We get through the next one. We're not quite at 10:30. So our delegation has got here, but I'll go, Brent, just an update on the wood chipper purchase.
Yeah, West Grey was able to successfully secure the purchase of the used wood chipper for a much reduced amount than anticipated for $7,500. So we're very happy with that.
Yep, updated our equipment and got from the county that it was still very good working order. So congratulations on bidding very well. Did you have any help from the auctioneer to my left here in bidding at all? No? No, good.
No comment.
Mr. Bell?
I would never want to get involved in something like that. The director knew what he wanted, and this piece of equipment was available. And just for the audience's knowledge, yes, Grey County bought a new one, an up-to-date one, and the purchase price of that was $80,000, and they disposed of this one through the gov deal process. Director of Infrastructure here made a calculated purchase, and I salute him for his intuitiveness, we'll put it that way, by bringing that forward. And I think that'll be used for obviously a lot of years and be a lot better piece of equipment than the other one, which is wore out. No doubt about it. Thanks, Brent.
Very good. Okay, that's for information. And right now we're at 10:30, so I am going to quickly go back to the delegations, Brent, and we'll come back to the third part in your report here. But this morning, welcome Mr. and Mrs. Barger. Mark? Bid? Yep. I know. I didn't know just who was going to be. If you could, because we're on camera and the podium over there is mic'd. Where do you want me to be? From the podium? Yep. If you can give that. We do live stream and press the gray button there, Mark. There you are.
Okay.
Now Adam's recording you and everything
Okay.
from here on in.
I'm ready to roll.
You're ready to roll. Floor's yours. Go ahead, Mark.
My wife and I are here over some concerns we have over target shooting, basically. At our house on August 12th, we were out in the backyard with our 3-year-old grandson, and he was out there playing. And the neighbors took it upon themselves on a Sunday morning, August 12th, to do some target shooting, which is, I paced off 50 paces from my house, is where they were. And the 3-year-old was downrange in the yard, and these guys opened fire at 10:30 in the morning, shooting high-powered rifles. And one of them had a muzzle brake for sure. But I'm a target shooter myself and a hunter. And what these guys were doing was unethical and basically dangerous, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I told them to stop, and if they didn't, I was going to phone the police. Now, they phoned the police, and the police come out and said there was nothing they could do. There's no bylaws or nothing about it. But when a 3-year-old's playing downrange in the yard, not 100 feet away. My fence is closer than that. I think there's something wrong here. So what I want is some bylaws made up, like no shooting within 100 meters of an occupied dwelling, for one. And supposedly, now I belong to a couple of gun clubs, and you never start shooting on a Sunday till after 1 o'clock. This was 10:30 in the morning. Supposedly, that's just a courteous thing. There's no law against it or anything. But in the case like this, I guess some people have no courtesy. So I think there should be a bylaw passed there too. No shooting till after 1 o'clock on Sunday. And no shooting within 100 meters of an occupied dwelling. That's what I propose here to be passed, because, I mean, the police didn't do anything about it. Come out and had a little talk with them.
Yeah.
They did move down the yard after, but they didn't phone us to tell us they were going to do this or nothing. And they knew, because they seen us out there with the 3-year-old, so they knew that this 3-year-old was playing in the backyard. So to me, what they did was dangerous, as far as I'm concerned. I can tell you right now, if you'd done that at a shooting club, you wouldn't be a part of that shooting club anymore. You'd be out of there. So what I want is a couple of bylaws passed, that's all. One, 100 within, no shooting within 100 meters of an occupied dwelling. And no shooting on a Sunday till after 1 o'clock. That's all.
Okay. Do have Chief of Police is here. I don't know whether any comments needed. Or you want to comment, Rob? No?
I'll comment. I agree with Mr. Barger that you can't legislate courtesy. That is one of the problems. And target shooting, when you're looking at in close proximity to a dwelling, we need to define what you're going to call an occupied dwelling, and we have to deal with trailers. And then we're into private property rights, where people have moved up here. Firearms are a big part of our community. Hunting is a big part of our community. We average about 1 call every 2 weeks for target shooting. Most of it is very simple. The people have been shooting for a long period of time. The 1 o'clock issue, there is no time limits on it in the Firearms Act what time you can shoot. That would have to be decided by council if it wants to, but if we're looking at 1 o'clock shooting, we all know that hunting occurs in the morning and the evening, so it's going to be before 1 o'clock anyways, and then we're interfering with hunting privileges and rights as well. I don't know if a bylaw would work, to be honest with you, Mr. Barger. People are on their property. If they were right on the fence line of your property, you called the police, which is the right thing to do. We will respond to those and we will investigate these matters. I can say keep calling us and let us know what's going on, because we don't know otherwise. But in terms of a bylaw, it would be very difficult to enforce with distances and definitions of close proximity and dwellings and everything else. And then we're into entering onto people's properties that are target shooting to do these inspections, which, to be honest with you, I don't have the staff to do that. We have target shooting all across this municipality. We hear it. We're hearing it more because the fall season is coming up and people are sighting in the rifles. And I shoot on my property and target in mine, but I do it safely with a backstop and well away from where my neighbors and everything else are. Council can do what they wish with their proposals, and we can do research for them into what other municipalities do for it to see if anybody else has dealt with this problem. But right now, courtesy is the biggest thing we have, and we can't legislate courtesy. Have you spoken to your neighbors at length about this, or have you had
can't
discussion?
speak to this guy. You may as well forget it.
Okay.
But, so you're saying it's okay for them to target shoot, and when there's a 3-year-old downrange, a couple of 100 feet away, that's all right?
I never said it's okay to target shoot when a 3-year-old is downrange.
Why, what are you saying then? You're saying there's no law against it?
There is no law against target shooting.
No, I know
If a
that.
3-year-old is downrange, then it's careless use of a firearms investigation. But I would have to get all the facts before I can even begin to make an informed decision to you on the facts of this case. Going on what you've told me, I'd have to look at what my officers found out, what their investigation bore to them that day. But if you've got a 3-year-old downrange, anyone who's an ethical and lawful target shooter is not going to shoot while a 3-year-old is downrange.
Yeah, exactly.
If he is downrange and he's in your yard, that would mean that they were shooting into your yard.
Yeah, but accidental discharges do happen, right?
Accidental discharges happen all the time, but were they
Exactly.
shooting into your yard, Mr. Barger?
There's no berm or anything between us.
Okay. Were they shooting in the
And
direction of
three-year-old,
your
you turn your
residence?
back on a 3-year-old for a minute, and they could be anywhere, right?
3-year-olds are very fast.
Yeah.
Did they know your 3-year-old was out?
Yes, they did. This is my point. This is why, I've seen them start to shoot out there before. We didn't have any kids around. I didn't care really, but they knew he was out there.
Okay, well, we're not going to debate the facts of the case. We're here to discuss about bylaw proposals. If council so directs it, we can do some research on what other municipalities are looking at. I don't think there's anything limiting targeting in the more rural municipalities like ours about target shooting, but we'd have to find out for sure to make that informed.
Well, I think 100 meters within an occupied dwelling is pretty reasonable, myself. I don't think anyone else here would want someone shooting 50 yards from your house when you got some kids playing in the backyard, and I'm pretty sure of that. I know I wasn't very happy about it. Like I say, I'm a shooter myself and a hunter, and I wouldn't do something like that. Eh? You know, I mean, it's wrong, it's unethical, and it's dangerous. That's all I got to say about it.
Okay.
And I can tell you right now, if you done something like that at a shooting club, you wouldn't belong to that shooting club anymore. You'd be out of there. So, I mean, how can you say it's okay? It's unsafe use of a firearm as far as I'm concerned. It's that simple. They didn't even call over this, like they could have called over too and told me that they were going to be doing this, but they didn't. So, like I say, I don't think 100 meters within an occupied dwelling is unreasonable at all. I think that's pretty reasonable.
Bev? Councillor Cuddy.
Over
Question
the
for
last
Mark.
year or two, there have been a number of emails to myself, and I'm sure probably to the other councillors, asking that there be something very similar to this about a restricted, not restricted use of a firearm, but restricted area, like within 100 meters of a residence, because there are other residents in West Grey that are concerned that they're, especially with the, you don't know where property lines are and stuff in the rural area, and they get very close to a house, but they can't see the house, and they're firing, and the people are nervous. So I think it's something the council should look at. I don't know the ins and outs of how that would work with the firearms and private property and all that stuff. I know they're trespassing if they cross, but then you've got a phone, and it gets to be very difficult, and yet hunting is an ain't right for some reason. So, yeah, I think it's something that maybe council should at least investigate, see if other municipalities do anything similar or have a similar bylaw. It would certainly distress me if somebody had done what you were doing, so. Not you were doing, they were doing.
That it?
Doug?
Yeah, just a comment. I think my concern would be if they were, as the chief had said, if they were shooting onto your property, like if they're shooting at a berm or some kind of backstop where it's safe, then that's one issue. But if they're shooting across or into someone else's property, that's another issue. So I would have a concern with that, and that's something that maybe, you know, the police would help us out with. The problem we have is that we do have sometimes houses that are fairly close proximity to each other, and I mean, if they have a limited amount of land, that becomes an issue. If they have a limited amount of space between your property and their property, ideally it would be nice if they take it out into a 50-acre field or somewhere away from properties. That would make sense, right? But so, and again, common sense. So that's the concern I would have, and maybe the police can look into that if that's the issue.
Yeah. Well, these people have 50 acres, and they chose to do it right there beside us. They could have went back to the back, eh? And they chose just to stand there. I guess it maybe you'd have to walk a bit too far to go back to the back or something, or drive back, I don't care, but why you'd do it right there is beyond me, eh? And still, when you're downrange on an angle, if you get an accidental discharge of a firearm, I mean, once it happens, you can't stop it, right? So it's like I said, as far as I was concerned, it was dangerous. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be hunting near these guys, let's put it that way. I hunt and I shoot myself, I target shoot. I go to a certified range to target shoot.
Okay, Councillor Thompson, Rob?
Yeah, I was just going to say, a bylaw is all well and fine, but if the bylaw is set, it's a $100 fine, they're going to pay it anyway, so they're not going to care. They're going to continue doing it. I think a bit of education there, but you called the police when this happened, when your grandson was out in the backyard?
No, I didn't, they did.
They called the police.
I told
Okay.
them if they kept it up, I was gonna call the police, so
Okay.
they called the
It
police.
would probably be just a suggestion to you, for you to call the police and file a complaint with the police on the careless use of a firearm.
Yeah.
That's what should be done. I mean, a bylaw is all well and fine, but how many people are going to listen to a bylaw?
Well, if you got it, and a $100 fine, make it 200.
Well, it's up to the court, it's up to
You
the
know.
courts who set,
Well,
you can put all the
either way.
amount of money you want on there, but it's got to get
I
approval.
mean, you can't,
so.
I mean, this shouldn't be allowed, that's all I'm saying.
Well, all I'm saying is, if that's the case, you should have called the police and
Yeah.
filed a
Well, I
complaint.
will next time. I didn't
Yeah.
want to have to call the
Yeah.
police.
I mean,
That's
a
why
bylaw
I
is a
said,
bylaw.
you know, if you keep it up, I'll
Yeah,
call the police.
and I think you should, sir. It's,
You know.
yeah, obviously, it could have ricochets, it could have anything, whether they're shooting across your property or down their end of the property. When you got a 3-year-old out there, let the
Exactly.
police make the determination through an investigation.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, they've done this before, but we had no kids around. I didn't really care. And the fact was, they knew he was in the backyard. So, and I know they knew. So, yeah.
Can I make the conclusion here that maybe asking our chief and/or staff to do a little bit of investigation on this? Discharging firearms, of course, has serious consequences if not done in a safe manner. Being a hunter myself, but I don't think that one thing that we can't ever legislate is common sense, courtesy between two neighbors.
Yeah, but something that's dangerous, you should be able to do something about.
Well, that's all fine, you know. We'll get a definition of dangerous, Mr. Barger. And, yep, what, you know, some people saying that traveling at 50 kilometers an hour on some of our roads, from your past experience, some people driving 50 is dangerous, and some people that can drive 80 and be safe on the same road. You know, it's a subjective thing. The Firearms Act may supersede us, so we have to, but I'll ask staff if council is agreeable to that, to give us some background information of where we can go and what we can do. But again, a lot of it comes back to courtesy with your neighbors.
And
you know,
common sense.
and common sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay?
Like, ethical, like that was unethical, you know.
Yep.
And in hunting courses and stuff, they supposedly teach this kind of, but everybody's idea of, or perception of ethics is different, right? But still, when you got 50 acres there and you got to do it right there, like, I mean, come on, really? Go to the back. Like, I wouldn't have cared if they went to the back. But when you got to just kick the door open and set up right there, you know, not 50 yards from my place there, my house,
Yeah.
and start shooting, and there's a 3-year-old playing around there. Or even if I was in the backyard, I wouldn't have been happy, which I was. But they did move after the police came. And like the police said, I said, well, the 3-year-old, they didn't mention that when they phoned. They said, of course they didn't. But they knew he was there, 'cause
Okay.
they seen me out there with him. I know they did, so. I mean, this was just basically dangerous, as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And I don't want it happening again, let's put it that way. Next time, I'm not gonna say a word to them, I'll phone the police, but it's dangerous use of a firearm. That's all it is, as far as I'm concerned.
Right, and I would say, let us, let the enforcement people of the law make that determination, and that's the society that we live in. And it's been pretty good up until, for the past 150 years.
Most people have common sense and courtesy, right?
Yes,
Exactly, you know what I mean? Most people do.
Yep.
There's always the odd one that doesn't, and they ruin it for everybody else, right?
you're exactly right.
It's always been the same story, eh? There's always somebody that ruins it for everybody. Well, that's what this is, but.
Yep. Well, that's what I can say for you today. We'll do that. It certainly don't have a bylaw prepared today and don't have the background
No, I'm not
information to
saying
do
this minute.
that.
I
So
know you gotta look
we'll
into
go
it,
ahead.
but
We'll,
I don't think 100 meters from an occupied dwelling is unreasonable.
Oh. Yep, in the rural areas. We certainly do in the urban areas. They're, for that reason, with the close proximity, but in the rural areas, and that's,
I don't
we'll
imagine
look at it.
you can shoot in town here, can you?
Pardon?
I don't imagine people shoot in town.
No, there is it's under the Firearms Act in
The thing, out
in
in
an
the
urban
country-
area.
Out in the country, houses are starting to go up and they're getting closer together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's always a new one going up somewhere out in the country these days. But,
Yep,
I mean, most people, like I say, they do have common sense and they do have common courtesy, right? But
yep.
some don't.
Very good.
Okay.
You've been heard well, and that's what I say. We will get staff working on that and see what we can come back with, in a prompt order.
Okay. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks. Okay. All right, we do have our second presentation is here. Mark, do you want to take a couple of minutes and we can get the PowerPoint set up? I think, Wayne, you need that, so, yeah, it would work well. All right, we'll take just a quick break and get Mark to set up that, and we can go from there. Let's call the meeting back to order. Thank you. We have our second delegation this morning. Thank you for your patience, Mr. Morgan. Council contracted Wayne Morgan, a heritage planner. That's a significant title.
Thank you.
To do a heritage study on the Durham Carnegie Free Library building, and give us an indication of what designations or options that we may find here in the Durham Heritage in the Carnegie building. So with that, your report is with us. I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Wayne. Welcome this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. You have the report before you. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but I'd just like to outline the scope of the report. And by the way, those are pictures of the library. Bottom one shortly after was constructed, the one above in the 1930s. So I did a history of the area and the libraries to fit this building in its context, and there were libraries prior to the building that you see here. I did a history of the site and the building of the Carnegie Library, so its actual construction. And you'll see in the pictures, both of the pictures, there's a building in behind the Carnegie Library. That was the Mechanics Institute, and the Mechanics Institute was the forerunner of our public library system. So they handled both adult education and libraries. So that earlier building sat in behind the newer Carnegie Library. I went into detail about the architecture of the library, both the exterior and the interior. And this is a lovely building, in my opinion. I did a heritage evaluation of the library, and I'll talk a little bit more about the evaluation process. And I prepared reasons for designation, including a list of heritage attributes. So that's attachment 3 in your report, and that's required by the Ontario Heritage Act. And then finally, I came up with a set of recommendations. And my recommendations are that council should express its intent to designate the property, and under the Ontario Heritage Act, you designate properties, not buildings. So you're designating the property at 240 Garifraxis Street North. Under Section 29 of the Ontario Heritage Act, and Section 29 deals with individual property designations by municipal councils, in accordance with the reasons for designation in the list of heritage attributes. So you'll see those in attachment number 3 in your bundle there. And that council take all the necessary steps to secure designation. So those are the 4 recommendations that you see in my report, and that's what they are intended to achieve. And the steps in the designation process are starting with council expresses its intent to designate the property. That intent is published locally and provided to the Ontario Heritage Trust, so you have to put it in the newspaper once to let people know that you're proposing to designate it. And by the way, you may have seen the term cartouche in my report. That little element that you see on the right-hand side is a cartouche. It's in the entrance to the building. So you publish your intent. There's a 30-day objection period at which anybody can object to the designation. If there are no objections, council passes the bylaw and registers it on title. If there are objections, it's referred to the Conservation Review Board. The Conservation Review Board, the CRB, holds a hearing, and it renders an opinion to council. So it doesn't give a decision, it gives an opinion. And it sends that opinion back to council, and then council makes its final decision in light of the CRB opinion. And some municipalities have agreed with the CRB, and if they've said don't designate it, they haven't designated it. Other municipalities have said, we don't care what you say, this is important to us, we're going to proceed to designate. And despite CRB's saying it's not worth designating, council has designated. So council has full control at the end of the process. Okay, why I'm recommending designation. The property meets the provincial designation criteria which are established under Regulation 906, which is passed by the provincial government under the Ontario Heritage Act. And what it says is that any property that's going to be designated must meet at least one of the criteria that are listed in Regulation 906. This building meets all of the criteria in Regulation 906. It's got design and physical value. This is a good example of a Beaux-Arts classical revival style of architecture. And classical revival goes back to Greek and Roman architecture. So you've actually got elements of Roman architecture in this building, in the columns that appear on it. And by the way, you probably saw the term pilaster in my report. That is a pilaster pictured there. It's half a column that's, plastered up against the wall. There's a high degree of craftsmanship in this building, particularly on the interior woodwork. When the books are removed, you look inside, and it's just amazing, the woodwork that's on this building. It has historical or associative value. There was an architect involved in this, William Austin Mahoney. He was an architect based in Guelph. He actually did 15 other Carnegie libraries. They all had to meet the Carnegie requirements, but each one of those libraries is different. And I pictured those libraries, the other 15, at the end of the report. This building is also associated with Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was a steel magnate who owned United States Steel, sold it, and used all the money for philanthropic purposes. In fact, the Carnegie Foundation still exists today. But in the late 1890s, in the turn of the century, he wanted to build libraries. Libraries in the English-speaking world. Despite the fact that he was American, he funded more than 100 libraries in Ontario and over 1,000 libraries worldwide. It's also associated with the Durham Mechanics Institute. So this is your forerunner of libraries in Durham. They were an association, and they promoted this building of this free library. Prior to the construction of this library, if you wanted to borrow books, you had to pay to be a member of the Mechanics Institute, and you had to pay an annual membership fee. Carnegie said, my libraries have to be free. So this was an important step in the library movement in Ontario. It also has contextual value, so it's important in terms of where it sits. It's linked to its surroundings. It's functioned as a library for 106 years, and it's a landmark. When you're driving up and down Garifraxa Road, you can see it because it sits prominent on the road. It's in front of the church, so it's very much a landmark. Even though it's a small building, it's a landmark because of its visibility and because of its unique architectural style. So that's why I'm recommending it, but I'm also recommending it because the community valued this. It's on land that was donated by Durham Mayor David Jackson Jr. So he donated the land to build the Mechanics Institute, and then they built the library on here. And his estate released all claim to that property in favor of the municipality. It was constructed at the urging of the Durham Mechanics Institute. So this was a local organization that said, we want this free library. We want to take advantage of this grant that Andrew Carnegie is providing. And Andrew Carnegie provided an $8,000 grant for the construction of this library, which in 1911 built the whole library and outfitted the interior of it. The construction of the library was supported by a community vote. So this went to all ratepayers in 1911 and said, do you support us getting the grant and building the library? And overwhelmingly, the majority of community members said, yes, we want this. It was supported by the municipal council at the time, and it served as the community library for 106 years. Lastly, it has a high level of heritage integrity. This isn't one of the criteria that's used in the Ontario Heritage Act, but as I look through this building, I see almost everything that was originally built for this library and in this library still exists there. And that shows you two of the interior pillars. Again, the classical revival theme coming back here, they're still there. What designation covers? So if you designate it, it covers all heritage attributes that are specified in the reasons for designation. So you see that in attachment 3. It includes things like the staircase between the first floor and the basement, that whole entrance portico, including the columns, those very wide eyebrows over the opening with the cartouche in the center. Even the steps up to the building were temple-like in construction, so it harks back to a Roman temple. Okay, if you designate it, what happens? Owners of designated properties, first of all, don't have to restore the building. They don't have to do anything to the building. You don't have to put anything back. If you just want to keep the building as is, you don't have to do anything. But if you are going to do something to the building, you want to alter it, you can alter features that are not heritage attributes. So anything that's not in that list, you can alter. So for example, in the basement, you have this room, and I'd suggest that council take those pictures out of there since they're your forerunners of mayors of Durham. But the walls, the ceiling lights, the carpeting, that can all be ripped out, and the owner can do that sort of thing. But if it is a heritage attribute, they can also make changes, but they have to come back to council and they say, we want to make this change. Are you okay with that change? So it's up to council, it comes back to council as to whether or not they agree with that change. The intent here is to keep as much of the building of the heritage as is important, as this community sees as being important. Carnegie libraries have been readapted. So a number of libraries are still used. Carnegie libraries are still used. I came through Shelburne this morning. That's a Carnegie library. It's still in use as a library, and they've added on to the back of it. But a number of libraries, Carnegie libraries, have ceased to be libraries. So for example, this is the Whitby Library, also designed by William Austin Mahoney. So the same architect, 1914, there you see it on the left, 2017, it's offices. So that has been completely converted to offices, and yet you see the character of that building has been retained. In Aylmer, another William Austin Mahoney Carnegie Library, 1920. You see on the left, 2015, it's an all-state insurance office. So it has been converted to offices. And yes, even though there are big staircases here, you can adapt them for persons with physical disabilities. The idea is you put the entrance somewhere where, an entrance for persons with disabilities somewhere where it's not going to interfere with the front character of the building. And these are usually the prominent parts of the building. In Midland, another William Austin Mahoney Library. There you see it on the left. I wasn't sure the date of the photograph. On the right, it's been converted to a restaurant. So they can serve a number of purposes, and yet that conversion, it still maintains the character there. The windows, it can still be maintained. You have to look at how you're going to alter the building carefully, but you can maintain that character. And lastly, the City of Toronto. This I knew as a youngster as the Central Reference Library. In fact, it was the first public library in Toronto, and it is a Carnegie Library. And it was converted to the University of Toronto Student Centre. So, and you can see the character has been maintained throughout. So that's my presentation. My recommendations are in the front cover. I'm open to any questions or comments.
Thanks, Brent. Thank you. Any questions, comments for Mr. Morgan? Very thorough job. We thank you very much for doing it. And when you've been around and you think you know some of the history, you've got to have somebody from outside come and uncover a few things, and I thank you for that. Any questions for Wayne? Rebecca, Councillor
Is there
Herger?
any benefit to just designating the exterior of the property so that we continue to see the same facade, but and then maybe just then possibly just a few items within the building that would, I mean, can we choose which pillars are designated, or do you do the whole property? It's the whole property.
Okay. Frequently, just the exterior of buildings is designated. I looked at this building and went to the interior and was really impressed with the interior features. So I've listed many of them, not all. Okay, those bookshelves were built for that library at the time that the library was built, but I did not include them in the list of heritage attributes. I'm giving you as council the opportunity to say, okay, this is important, but somebody comes in and alters it, or wants to alter it, you then have the option, if it's in that list. If it's not in that list, you don't have that control over it. So even though it's on the list, you can say, okay, you justify these alterations to me in removing whatever. But you know, it's in your control. So yes, you could limit it to the exterior of the building. In this case, I wouldn't recommend it because there's so many fine interior features that probably can be kept. For example, if it was converted to offices, some of those features they would love to retain in the building.
Okay, anybody else? At question period would be a good time for that, David. So we have the package. I've had Wayne, sorry. You got me off. Thanks, Mr. Wild. Do we want to take a little bit of time, at Committee of the Whole next week after we've had, from Wayne, Mr. Morgan giving us this, and at Committee of the Whole next week, have a bit better discussion as to where we're going to go? We can handle the agenda. Anyways, at Committee of the Whole, whether it be next week or sometime coming up. Doug?
Yeah, I think it's good to have this designation and have the details so that because we have a request for proposals out there of usage of the library, then depending on who comes in with what they want to do with it, then we have some control of what's there and what we want to keep, right? Like you said. So I think it's good to have this, and maybe we look at this along with our proposals at that time, or when they're ready.
Or as they're putting those proposals together, being able to go in unison step with where council is thinking, that'll give them a bit better indication of what they want to propose, if there's individuals out there at this point in time, or groups. Shouldn't leave it just to individuals that are looking at this. Okay? Mark? Staff, go ahead.
Hi, Wayne. You showed a picture of one of the windows with the arch with the woodwork around it. So if that was designated as one of the features and somebody wanted to put more better windows, more energy efficient windows, as long as they retained the woodwork feature, that would be fine doing that, would it?
Again, it'd be at council's discretion, because I've included the casings around the windows, the wood casings, the shape of the window, and the sash in the window. If they want to replace the sash, they have to come back to you and say, this is what we want to put in. I would suggest that if they want to put energy efficient windows in, that they should have the appearance of the windows that used to be there. I'd also like to add one comment, if I may. If there is an objection and it goes to the Conservation Review Board, the Conservation Review Board, its sole mandate in looking at designations is to consider whether it meets the criteria under Regulation 0906, which is what I did. So if somebody objects, in my humble opinion, they're going to lose, because I went through this in detail and it meets all the criteria. So I don't think you need to worry about an objection and whether or not it will be successful.
I just wish we had lawyers give us that direct advice. Yeah. Oh, that's right, you're a planner. They're never that objective. Is council fine with taking that? And we'll put it on the next, where it fits into the next committee of the whole meeting and follow that process. Very good. Don't see any objections to that, giving that direction. Wayne, again, thank you very, very much for the, excuse me, in-depth detail that you went into this. There was a lot of interest from my part was on the Mechanics Institute. That had kind of heard about it, but didn't really get an understanding that. I thought they were all gearheads. I didn't know they'd like to read. I guess I'll leave it at that from the mechanics part of it. But give us, and I wish that we, as you'll notice, we have one councillor that is not here because of medical issues. Carol Lawrence has been on council 42 years in an elected position, not just on, been on Westgrave for 18 and goes back into the Durham years, has been an elected official and has great knowledge, and she was very interested in this. So disappointment that you didn't get to meet Carol and go through some of this with her, and with her disappointment as well too. She was very, very passionate about the Carnegie building that's there.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much. I enjoyed working on this project. You have a lovely building here.
It is, it is. And I guess just one last little detail. Was it only Mahoney's that had the portico in the Carnegie buildings? Because you don't see it very often in those Carnegie buildings. I'm thinking that portico out the front, and was that kind of his little bit of a...
That's what makes this building somewhat unusual. There was, I found one other of his libraries that had this type of portico on it. It's not a common feature. I haven't gone through all 100 other Carnegie libraries, so I can't say definitively, but certainly it is unique on your library.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much. All right. With that, thank you very much, Wayne. Greatly appreciative, and safe travels for the rest of the day. You got that going off? Okay. Thank you, Brent. And we're about that time. We have one more delegation on this morning, and I believe Ty and Danielle are here to talk about the Newstead Lagoon and Cemetery Road issue. So, Ty or Danielle, could we ask you just to use the podium? Yeah, the podium. Well, go right to the podium, not the desk. We'll get you directed. The microphone's there because we have Adam recording this. So the gray button will turn that mic on. And there you go. Together you've got it. Okay.
Yes,
welcome this morning, and the floor is yours.
thank you. Thank you. Sorry, we're new to this, so you'll have to excuse us a little bit. Yeah, we're from Newstead, obviously. We live on Cemetery Road. We never did get municipal water up the road when they had originally put the municipal water in there. And we all currently are living on wells that nobody drinks because we all feel that it makes you sick because whenever you drink it, you don't feel well. So, and we're very close to lagoons, so we would like to have some testing done to make sure that everything is still on the safe side as far as no, contamination or anything. Or it could be runoff from the fields. We have no idea, but we would appreciate some more testing where it's like a third-party testing. So there's no, what do you call that? Kind of. So it's all in
Biased or subjectivity?
Yeah, subjectivity, I guess that's the best way to put it.
More additional tests done besides just looking for, what's the E. coli, I guess, is the one they usually test for. We're concerned about agricultural runoff or pesticides and other elements there. It's not only us, but it's 3 wells that are having a problem, so. And as well as flow ratio, we've had several dry years too, where we're not getting the proper flow rate that we should, except for this year, obviously, we had lots of water.
There's been a fair bit of flow in the last month, yeah.
Yes.
June, not so much, but yeah, the last month.
But we have a petition, it's signed by all the residents on Cemetery Road requesting the assistance in putting in a water main so we can,
Have our municipal...
To extend the water main up there.
yes, sir.
Yes.
What I would say, there's been no precedent for private well testing. That, I believe, would be, a step that I'm not sure that council, or that I could recommend that council gets into private well testing. We have wells that are tested from the landfill it is close by, in and around the old landfill, in and around the fire hall, that are tested for leachate monitoring. The lagoons, there could be any speculation there, but on private wells, I can say that it's never been the municipalities, hasn't taken that responsibility on. We do our own. The idea, so, if council was to go ahead and put something into place, testing the wells almost becomes redundant, because we have the testing at the lagoons that I believe, and I have certainty, Brent, that meet the requirements at the lagoon site anyways of where the engineers say things are going and whatnot from the lagoon. Do you want to comment on that?
You're correct, Your Worship. We do test the effluent leaving lagoons before it enters into the river, but it is tested in that, I think the first lagoon is tested for various chemicals and water pH and alkalinities and different things like that. I know these residents, I guess they're concerned that there's a potential that the lagoons were built 40 plus years ago, 43 years ago, I believe, set in 1975.
Somewhere around there.
At the time, there's a standard level of construction. They're capped with the base is capped with 1 meter of very dense clay, and is used that's basically the impermeable part of the lagoon that retains the water and stops the leachate from leaking into the ground. I guess to come back to subjectivity, though, to ensure that these residents' wells, because of their close proximity to the lagoon, and the other residents in Newstead are covered with the water service, it's not a very expensive test. It's very easy. It's free testing for E. coli, and the health department, they can get free samples. But I guess one thing we want to rule out, and it's just my opinion, is just to rule out that there's no contamination from our lagoon, that it's not leaching out anywhere into the groundwater source. I guess we could use that. I know you were talking about that opens the door for other testing, but this is a kind of unique situation because of the close proximity of our lagoon to these residents, that it might be a good opportunity that we look at it, review it, and then we have the answer, a wholesome answer, to determine that there's no contamination from our lagoons entering the water system, or and we tell these folks that, I'm sorry, but it's not contamination of our, which I hope not. I sincerely hope that that's not the case, but it would rule out that part of it. The testing, Maxim Analytics are currently do all our water testing, and like I said, it's not a very expensive test to have them perform the test, and have Steve, who checks all our water, and send them a sample of the well water from these places, just to have a full report for council to look at, and also the residents to know that, and it would have all the minerals, and if there's any agricultural fertilizers or anything like that would show up in that water. That's just my thoughts on it.
Rebecca?
Have you done your own private testing?
No, we haven't.
Okay, so could we possibly just start right there and just get the water bottle and get it down to the health unit and see where we're at that point? Brent, how much is this test? You said it's not very expensive. How much is it?
I'd have to check, but the last viewing the water testing bills that I see come in doesn't seem to be outrageous. I'd have to go back and look, and I'd be guessing right now, but between $100, $200.
So I would just like to see, I mean, I've done 3 water samples on my house and another property. It's a very easy process to do, and I would encourage anybody who's on a well to do this every year even, right? Just go get the test done, and then from that point, that checks for E. coli and coliform. So that would be a good start just to see, you know, if one of those pops up, then we'd know, you know, we'd look into other testing, further testing at that point. I'd like to see that a first step, though.
Sure. And as well, we would still prefer to get some municipal water up there because our wells run dry all the time. And even the neighborhood, he's not on our road, but he's above us. He's completely out of water. He's been out of water all summer.
As well as access to a fire hydrant.
Yeah, we don't have a fire hydrant at the end of our road, so if God forbid there was a fire, they would have to either tank the trucks in there or whatever, because that fire hydrant is too far away from the houses. Like it's right on the highway versus in to the back of the road there.
So how do we resolve this at this point? Brent, can you bring us back a costing? Because certainly getting individuals that are this close to Newstead being inside the urban area, I have no idea why the water wasn't extended when the services were put into Newstead years ago. I've heard numerous thoughts that have been there, but at this point in time, get us what a costing of running water lines up and a costing, a good costing of any of the testing that we may indicate about doing. Brent?
Just so happen to have an estimate that I did, if you would like to know at this point in time, or I can bring it back after I get the water testing results.
Let's put it all to, let's have it together, yeah. And get it down there. You're saying, Mr. Thompson? Oh, okay. No, I thought you had a question. That's very good. So we will jump at that, see what it's going to be. I don't know whether at this point, if we look at the water, whether sewer is another thing altogether. But
Yeah, because we are all on septic tanks at the current moment, because that's the way it's been. Like, we weren't here when they initially put the water in, so we can't speak for that.
no,
But, I mean, when we bought the property, it was only well water. Everybody out there has well water and septics, which is, the big one that we need is regular water. We don't have regular water, and nobody drinks their well water where we are. And, you know, in our case, we have a shallow well and a deep well, and the deep well is, of course, sulfur, because in that area, if you dig too deep, you land into the sulfur water. And I don't know if you had any experience with sulfur water, but it's not very pleasant, especially for washing your laundry or all that kind of stuff, because it does have quite an odor to it, and it comes out black. So,
living for 20 years, not
Yeah.
more than 2 miles away from there, I can agree with you. I know exactly what
It's
you're
not
going
nice.
through. No. And I don't care what filtration system you have, it
doesn't work. And we have put in a collagen
it
one.
works, but
Yeah.
it's not 100% effective.
No.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But we do have this petition signed by all the neighbors stating that they do want municipal water. Can I bring that up to you?
Yes, please.
I was just curious, on the same subject, why you have warning signs in the bathroom that your water isn't tested for drinking? I've never seen that before. I was
On a
surprised to see.
public, in public, it won't matter. That is, when you're a public facility, and hopefully I'm going to get this right, the health unit, we have to post that the well, it's not on a municipal water system. And that's a warning to individual people. I happen to be drinking it here now, but it's a liability thing in public facilities that are on a well to indicate to the public that it's not a treated system that's here.
But if there was no risk, why would they post that? I was just curious. I mean, it seems ironic that we're talking about safe drinking water, and you walk in your washroom here in a public facility, and you've got a warning that the water hasn't been tested for drinking.
That's
And
exactly...
she mentioned that you do several tests all the time. I mean, obviously, that would indicate that either somebody's not doing the test, or obviously there's a health problem with that.
There's not a... It gets... Yeah.
I'm just kind of
It gets,
right?
as the deputy mayor's just said,
not to stir
that's
up
the too
things.
obvious, but quite frankly, it's all come from the new Safe Water Act after what happened in Walkerton.
Right.
So any place that is public access, we have to indicate that this water, do we test it? Yes. But on an absolute day-to-day basis, no. So you post it, that's what it is, and it's for insurance and liability issues and to meet the act.
And that's where our point comes back to the testing. I mean, it could be fine one day, and the next day there could be a contamination problem with the water, depending on whether you guys are dumping the sewage, the raw sewage, right, 600 yards from our house into the river, and it's going right into the water. And
There is no raw sewage, that's all treated, that's all treated that's up there. Yeah. Nothing that's dispersed into the river, so let's make that clear.
Yeah, well, there
It
is a
goes
lot
through
of
the
raw
system.
sewage that goes on the fields too as well.
That is, there's no, I wouldn't say that there's raw sewage, but it is affluent out of from another municipality that goes onto fields in the area.
I see.
Yes. And it meets the regulations from Ministry of Environment on that.
Going by your own guidelines, there is, because of public concerns of health risks, there is a potential for risk in the groundwater contamination on a day-to-day basis, based on what your statement was, that they're not testing the water even in your own facilities every single day.
That's, yeah.
So we're in the same boat, right?
Yep.
And we're entitled to clean, healthy drinking water, as citizens and taxpayers.
So we will see whether we can get what it's going to cost to get the pipe up and be able to get that, how quickly or on a budgeted schedule we can get that in front of you.
I appreciate that, and, even if there is some cost that we have to incur, we're prepared to do that as a group. We've already discussed this, but we feel we're entitled to it. We are within the city limits of Newstead. We're not outside of that, we're right in it. So that, I don't know why that wasn't mandatorily put in the first place.
As I said, I can't give you a definitive answer on that. There doesn't seem to be anything on paper as to why it didn't go up that road at the time.
Right. But I would say if somebody was to do an assessment on the wells around the lagoons, and then you said a previous dump was there before, or?
The landfill has been decommissioned and is tested on a regular basis. It was in behind the fire hall.
Yeah, that's real close to
We're super
that
close.
backs up
You
to
can
our
throw a
land
stone
on the
to it.
property.
Yes, it does.
So
The flow from that is away from your, the tow area flows away from, there's been identified that it flows away from your property.
I see. Was that they can't really determine that with groundwater, though?
Well, you can
I
determine
mean,
which
if
way
things leach in and
groundwater's
they get
going.
into the groundwater supply, there's
How
a
do you get it out
potential,
of the
there's a
ground?
potential
Yeah.
for contamination.
There's potential for just about everything, you
That's
know.
right.
But for the best guess, professional opinions that we have, there is no problem at this point in time.
But
with that.
that's based on no assessment done on the wells around the properties, right?
It's not from your private,
all the
not in your private wells, but it's done on
That's
the,
right.
on the test wells that are around the landfill at this point in time, that are there. I think the best thing for us to do right now, to continue on, there are testing bottles here, you know, to start. Test, you know, have your well tested.
Yeah, we'll do that right away.
Do that right away. Brent will get us better numbers and report on, you know, what it's going to be to extend water up to, up Cemetery Road to the properties involved in this, that
Okay.
are with this. And it is a user-pay system, so we'll see where we go with that.
And you said that we could have additional testing. My background is I used to do floodplain analysis and modeling software for municipalities all across Canada for clean drinking water, runoff, and that type of stuff. And we've seen even, for example, not to get into a big speech here, but even in Lake Ontario, the fish were changing sexes because there was pharmaceuticals being dumped in the water from people, everybody consuming them, and then there was estrogen and blood pressure pills and everything else that was just, they were finding traces of this stuff in the water. So there is other stuff like runoff that we're concerned about, agricultural runoff and chemicals, that stuff that could be leached into the water and getting into our water table that we're taking showers in and drinking the water. So either way, regardless of what comes back, we're prepared, you know, whatever it takes, because the water main is at the corner of the road, and if we run the water main, it would solve the problem here that we're concerned about.
Okay.
That's all I have to say.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. What we'll, as I said, we'll ask Brent to give us the report back on where we're at with that and what it's going to cost us, and that'll probably be able to be done in the next couple of weeks? Okay.
I know you're busy, and thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Yep, very good. Okay. Have a great day. Yeah, I think we've got it, yeah. Yeah, Ty's given us a copy of that. Thank you. All right. Brent, I think we're down to your third report now. We'll switch back to that. Page about 119. I think is the one we're looking at there. This one is an amendment to the Waste Management Collection Agreement. Anything else in there, or anything further on that? Brent? An
Any
update us on?
questions if any council member has a question?
Yep. And the bylaw is just kind of this is the report indicating, and if everybody's fine, we'll have the bylaw prepared for the next council meeting. Mark? Bev?
I just have a question, Brent. This $731.23 per month, is that approximately, I know we were talking about using the Normanby landfill as a transfer station.
Yep.
This sort of gives us a bit of an indication as to what that would be over the 6-month period that they're asking for. Is that where we would be transferring so it's
correct.
We're looking at,
Actually, no, I'm sorry. No, I apologize. No, this is actually from household. This is curbside.
yeah, this is curbside pickup.
Yep.
But-
No, but you are correct. I believe I've got that costing back in my office, but it's very close to that number.
Right, okay,
Yeah.
and that's sort of one of the figures we were sort of looking at
Yeah.
for, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. sorry, go ahead, yeah.
Brent, that $736 we were just talking about, that is for picking up at the houses and taking it the further distance, instead of dropping it at Norman B landfill, taking it the further distance up to Bentic. So is that actually a good representation of how much it would cost? Like Bev was trying to kind of make the connection there, because how many trucks would be going up to that other landfill? I mean, we're talking about all the collection for Normanby.
So, let me get this, if I understand this correctly. Just if I can recall, it costs the lift to take the dumpster up to, the current cost is $183 per lift. $183 times 4 is very close to, I think, 731 or something like that. I haven't got my calculator. But anyways, this cost, you are correct. This is for the 6 months that normally the waste would have been transferred or taken household into Normanby rather than being shipped up to the Bentic site. So this is over and above what their current tender or the agreement, what they bid on was 6 months on, 6 months off. So that was acknowledged in the bidding process at the time. So this is just to cover off the 6 months that are now continuing on into Bentic. So the actual cost, annually, the additional cost that it's going to cost us is approximately $4,400 is what it's going to cost us to have the land or the
Transfer.
curbside garbage trucked up to Bentic. Because the original 6 months was already in the original costing of the contract.
Okay. And that'll all be in place for the September 18th landfill meeting. We'll have some of those numbers and...
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah. Okay. All right. That, as I said, so if there's no other questions or concerns, then we'll have that opened up and ready to go on the 17th for that bylaw. All right, the next one is the Bentic Bridge report, the amendments to that. I think very minor.
I think I just wanted council to be aware of the minor amendments before we put it on our website to ensure that you have the correct information.
Yep.
And the public, more importantly, the public have the correct information. And I had to do another investigation of it. As it turns out, as you can see, that one of the things that was missed in the total asset management part of it is the Newstead Bridge, the walkway bridge. It has to be considered as part of one of our bridges, a new asset, because it expands more than 3 meters. And under the definition, any structure that exceeds more than 3 meters must be classified as a bridge. So therefore, it now has to be introduced as another asset in our infrastructure.
Okay. Very good. All right. Minor in nature, but just so that there's no difference from what we received earlier to what's going out on the website. That's good.
Minor tweaks, yeah.
All right. The next one is the tender for the structure barrier and guide rail installation. I have a motion moved by Doug Hutchison, seconded by John A. Bell. Resolved that the Council of the Municipality of West Grey hereby awards tender WG 1812 for structure barrier guide rail installation to Owen King Limited for a total value of $103,525, excluding taxes. Any questions or comments on this one? It was a project we were looking to do, got it tendered out. Still all kinds of time for Kings to get this done.
The closing date for this is the end of October, and it's not near as invasive work as the other bridges that they're currently working on. This is just for safety approaches only, so it's mostly subtrade work, actually, Your Worship.
Yep. Okay. All right, any other questions, comments on this motion? Call the question, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, any other questions for Mr. Glacier before we get him back to productive work? All right, thank you very much, Brent. Next one up, Fire Chief. Good morning, Chief. Schwartz. Council had asked for a update after the Elmwood fire had looked at the naloxone, yeah, the naloxone program for the fire services, and Chief Schwartz has given us an update. At the time, West Grey Service was not going to be into administering, but now it's come back, and you're recommending that for fire service members, we have it there, but it wouldn't be for public use.
As a safety precaution, we would carry it. If EMS wanted to use it because they have multiple patients and they're quite welcome, we'd hand it over to them for their use. As you know, this new type of drug that's out there is pretty deadly. Just a grain of it on your finger can cause death, so it was something we think we should be carrying. We have had in West Grey over the past 12 months, we've had, I believe it's 5 calls dealing with it. So I think it's here to stay, and we need to be cautious on and be prepared to look after it.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Bell, Deputy Mayor Jones?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a case of education, Phil, this stuff, the cost of it, and does it go bad? Is there a date of expiry on this stuff that you got to keep replenishing this stuff?
I would imagine it's got to be replenished every year, same as an EpiPen type of deal.
Year? Okay.
Yeah. The exact cost, I'm not sure. I know they do get it at the drugstore for free if you're an addict, so I don't have any addicts I can send down there, but we'll looking around.
Yeah, I think as a precaution and good safety measure, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I just wondered about those 2 points, so thank you all those supporting this.
All right. Rebecca, Councillor Hurd.
Quick question. So every 2 years they need to be replaced. Do we have training? Do we have everyone trained, or how many people do we require to have?
We haven't had any training yet, but we're looking at having Grey County EMS come in and train us. I'll be talking to Kevin McNabb on that, the EMS chief for Grey County.
Okay. Do we know the hours that it would be required? Like, is it a 2-hour training?
I would imagine it's likely minimal 2-hour training.
Okay.
I mean, I take insulin, and the training for that was 35 minutes. So I mean, it's a pen. You administer it once and it's disposable, so there won't be much to it, I don't imagine.
Yeah. All right, so if council is fine with that, about introducing, we will have a bylaw in place for the next council meeting on having that for the safety of our firefighters. Anything else on that, Phil?
No, that's it.
Good. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, that brings us down to bylaws that we have 2 bylaws here. First one for a coming on better get 95, this is 96. We'll start with them first. Okay, this one was recommended from the Committee of Adjustment, the Site Plan Control Agreement. Have a motion moved by Bev Cutting, seconded by R. Hergert. Be resolved that bylaw number 95, 2018, being a bylaw to authorize the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan control agreement between the Municipality of West Grey and Trevor Bruce Gilkinson, owner, and Donald Oliver Smith, mortgagee, on lands described as Part Lot 5, west of Queen Street, 6W of Queen Street, Plan 500 Durham, as in GS 115823 West Grey, PIN 37317-0358 LT. Be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, be engrossed in the bylaw book. And as I said, this was recommended for approval from the planning committee. Any further discussion on the bylaw? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right. Second one is the confirming bylaw. It's been moved by Rob Thompson, seconded by Doug Hutchison. Be it resolved that bylaw number 96, 2018, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the September 5th, 2018 council meeting, be now read a first, second, and third time, passed and numbered, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk, sealed with the seal of the corporation, and be engrossed in the bylaw book. Any questions on this motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, that's it for bylaws, Mark. Any new business? Addendums, notice of motion? We do have, didn't finish up with closed session, but in the sense of time, before we go back into closed session, which I'm going to say will be after lunch, council like me to skip, for those that are in the audience, down to question period and not have you come back in an hour and a half, maybe, after lunch. Fine, if I got council's agreement on that. Question period. Is there any questions from the audience on anything that was there? Mr. Wild. David?
On the designation of the old library to a heritage site, does that include, or did the explanation include the cost of bringing it up to date? Like this huge crack in the porchway at the top of the stairs, and that was underneath the two pillars that are holding up the far end of the doorway there. And I don't know if that's has to be repaired, or is that included in the declaration of being a heritage, and then the obligation of the council to do all those repairs?
It is not in that report. The report from Mr. Morgan was just on whether it's designated, what should be, what could be designated. Any of the maintenance or repairs will be at the owner, whoever that may be, into the future. So that to be determined at a following date. Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Townsend? Stephen?
Yeah, same topic. I'm just wondering, during your discussion with the planner, did they comment at all on if you agree to so many changes, you could actually lose the heritage designation, so you could kind of watch that? And it wasn't raised specifically, and they said you could do what you wanted as council to agree to it, but I'm just wondering if they gave that word as well.
I would look to anybody else if they heard that, but I don't, yeah, you're correct on what changes. I don't know how much you'd have to change, whether that would make it fall out or whether it would ever take the designation off. Something to find out about. Maybe Councillor Cutting.
Well, I think maybe the point that he stated was that the actual lot is designated, not the building, which is rather interesting. So I think maybe, and hopefully, if it is a designated historical building, that the council of the day would not allow renovations that would take away the features that make it a designation. I would hope that only makes sense. So I think it's just a matter of common sense. And yes, we can ask him if there are a certain amount, but if you're going to just go ahead and allow them to rip out and gut the interior and put up a bunch of drywall, then what's the point of designating it, really? So.
Yeah. But that would be a question to ask somewhere into the future here. Thank you, Steve. Anything else? Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving us this opportunity to ask our questions now as opposed to 2 o'clock. How come or why was the reason to have to pay $20,000 or put in $20,000 for new fuel tanks?
In the financials, yes. It would be the price of fuel tanks. As you know from the use of them and whatnot, I'm going to say that they do wear out, and before you have an environmental hazard of one springing a leak, that we replace them.
Or was it because you got a new fuel supplier?
I don't believe so, because I'm pretty sure we own our own tanks.
No, well, you do now, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you put in $20,000 to have 5 new tanks done in the last month.
Yes.
Okay, nobody knows. What happened to the fire truck that cost $11,000 to get it fixed?
I wish the fire chief was here. We could ask him that, but he is not here.
Do we have problems with dogs?
Yes, we do have problem with dogs in the municipality. Some people let them out of their vehicles, other people keep them in.
Okay, so you got to have the canine catcher come and catch them.
That's exactly right.
Okay, this fellow that wants to come and tell you how to build bridges, wood bridges, I'm not too sure about just want to go along with his theory. He proposed to do a bridge in town here, a heritage wooden bridge, for somewhere around 300,000. And by the time he was done, it was putting in 600,000. Now, I think people had better be on the ball on that, or he'll sell you a product that you won't know what to charge you.
The only explanation I'll give you for that one, Bob, is that you should use engineers that talk to one another.
Well, perhaps we should stick to cement bridges and get the job done right. Build real bridges.
Possibly we could do that. That would mean closing down and getting rid of all the steel bridges we have out there right now, too.
Well, we have bridges, though, that have been closed for a couple of years, and, well, a few more years, there won't be any bridges left. Well, there's be a few new cement bridges, but, okay, thank you kindly. I'm not much wiser than I was, I guess.
Very good. I'll find out the answer for you on the fire truck. What the cost was, what we were repairing on the fire truck. Okay? Any other questions at this point in time? None? All right. Municipal Act notices, I don't believe we have any. At this point, I'm going to ask for adjournment for lunch. No, temporary. Do we need a motion on that? No, just a temporary. That's what we're doing, is taking a lunch break, and we'll return at 1 o'clock. I think the only thing left is a closed session at 1 o'clock. All right? Okay. Thank you. And thank you to everybody out there.